Welcome to True Crime Talks, where we uncover the chilling stories behind the headlines. Today, we dive into the shocking case of Allison Owen, a woman who paid the ultimate price after uncovering her husband's secret double life. Allison Owen appeared to have the kind of life many people dreamed of. She lived in a picturesque suburban neighborhood in a charming two-story house with a neatly manicured lawn and a porch adorned with flower pots. Inside, the home was warm and inviting, filled with family photos, children's artwork, and the comforting hum of a busy household. Allison was a devoted mother to her two young children, Emma and Noah, and a loving wife to her husband. To everyone who knew them, the Owens were the epitome of a happy, successful family. Gabriel, a real estate agent, was well respected in the community, known for his charisma and ability to close deals effortlessly. Allison, on the other hand, was the glue that held their family together, organized, caring, and always putting her family first. But beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, there were subtle signs that something wasn't quite right. Allison had always been intuitive, and over time she began to notice little things that didn't add up. Gabriel, who had once been attentive and present, started spending more and more time away from home. He often claimed he had late meetings with clients or networking events that ran into the evening. At first, Allison didn't think much of it. After all, Gabriel's job required him to be social and available at odd hours. But as the weeks turned into months, his absences became more frequent, and his explanations grew vaguer. There were other changes too. Gabriel, who had always been open with his phone, suddenly became secretive about it. He started carrying it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom, and would quickly lock the screen whenever Allison entered the room. Once, when she asked to borrow his phone to make a call, he hesitated before handing it over, his face tense. Allison brushed it off at the time, chalking it up to stress from work, but the incident lingered in the back of her mind. Another red flag was Gabriel's sudden interest in their finances. He began making large withdrawals from their joint account, claiming it was for investments or business expenses. When Allison asked for details, he would dismiss her concerns, saying she didn't need to worry about it. This was unusual for Gabriel, who had always been transparent about their finances. Allison tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the nagging feeling that something was wrong refused to go away. The final straw came one evening when Gabriel came home late, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. Allison's heart sank as she watched him casually toss his jacket over a chair and head to the kitchen for a glass of water. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but she hesitated. What if she was wrong? What if her suspicions were just the result of stress or paranoia? She decided to wait, to gather more evidence before saying anything. That night, as Gabriel slept soundly beside her, Allison lay awake, her mind racing. She thought about the late nights, the secretive behavior, the unexplained expenses. She thought about the way Gabriel had been distant lately, how he seemed to be living in a world she wasn't part of. Finally, she made a decision. She would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Quietly, she reached for Gabriel's phone on the nightstand, her heart pounding as she carefully lifted his hand and pressed his thumb to the fingerprint sensor. The screen unlocked, and Allison's world was about to change forever. Allison's hands trembled as she held Gabriel's phone, the glow of the screen illuminating her face in the dark room. She hesitated for a moment, guilt gnawing at her for invading his privacy. But the weight of her suspicions pushed her forward. She started with his messages, scrolling through countless conversations with clients and colleagues. At first, everything seemed normal. But then she saw a thread of messages with a woman named Lisa. The tone of their exchanges was far from professional. They were filled with affectionate words, inside jokes, and plans to meet up. Allison's stomach churned as she read through them, her heart sinking with each new message. But it didn't stop there. She opened his photo gallery and found pictures that made her blood run cold. There were images of Gabriel with Lisa, smiling and laughing like a couple deeply in love. In some photos, they were with two young children, a boy and a girl who looked eerily similar to Emma and Noah. Allison's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Was it possible that Gabriel had another family? The thought seemed too absurd to be true, but the evidence was right in front of her. She dug deeper, opening his banking app. Her eyes widened as she saw multiple large withdrawals from their joint account, transactions she had no knowledge of. There were payments to a mortgage company, a daycare center, and even a school, none of which were connected to their own lives. Allison felt a wave of nausea as the pieces began to fall into place. Gabriel wasn't just having an affair. He was leading an entirely separate life with another woman and children. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She thought back to all the times Gabriel had been working late or out of town for business. Had he really been with Lisa and their other family? How long had this been going on? Years, it seemed, based on the ages of the children in the photos. Allison's mind spun with questions, but one thing was clear. Gabriel had been lying to her for a very long time. She quickly took photos of the evidence on Gabriel's phone, her hands shaking so badly that it was hard to keep the camera steady. She knew she needed proof, something concrete to confront him with. As she scrolled through more messages, she found conversations where Gabriel and Lisa discussed their future together. Plans to buy a bigger house, vacations they wanted to take, even discussions about marriage. It was as if Allison and their children didn't exist in Gabriel's other life. The betrayal was overwhelming. Allison felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, fear, but above all, a burning determination to protect herself and her children. She couldn't let Gabriel continue to deceive her, to live this double life at her expense. She carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand, making sure not to wake him, and slipped out of bed. She needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. As she sat in the dimly lit living room, clutching her phone with the evidence she had gathered, Allison felt a strange sense of clarity. She had always trusted Gabriel, believed in the life they had built together. But now she saw him for who he really was, a man capable of living a lie, of betraying the people who loved him most. She knew confronting him would be dangerous, but she couldn't stay silent. She had to protect her children and herself, no matter what it took. The hours passed slowly as Allison sat in the quiet house, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. She thought about hiring a lawyer, about filing for divorce, about exposing Gabriel's secret life to the world. But she also felt a deep sense of fear. Gabriel had always been charming and persuasive, but there was a side of him she had never seen before, a cold, calculating side that she didn't fully understand. What would he do if he found out she knew the truth? The question lingered in her mind as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, signaling the start of a day that would change everything. The morning after Allison's discovery, the house felt unnaturally quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She had barely slept, her mind racing with the weight of what she had uncovered. Gabriel, oblivious to her turmoil, moved through his usual routine, showering, dressing, and grabbing a quick breakfast before heading out the door. Allison watched him from the kitchen table, her coffee untouched, her stomach in knots. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had to confront him, to demand answers, even if it meant shattering the fragile illusion of their life together. As soon as the kids were off to school, Allison called Gabriel and asked him to come home, telling him it was urgent. He sounded annoyed but agreed, and within an hour he was walking through the front door, his expression a mix of irritation and curiosity. Allison was waiting for him in the living room, the printed evidence spread out on the coffee table. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say, but now that he was standing in front of her, the words felt heavy and unsteady on her tongue. Gabriel's eyes flicked to the papers on the table, and for a brief moment his confident demeanor faltered. But he quickly recovered, crossing his arms and asking in a clipped tone what this was all about. Allison took a deep breath and began, her voice trembling but firm. She laid out everything she had found, the messages with Lisa, the photos of his other family, the unexplained withdrawals from their bank account. As she spoke, Gabriel's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, anger, and finally a chilling calm. When she finished, there was a long, tense silence. Gabriel stared at her, his jaw tight, his eyes unreadable. Then, to her shock, he laughed, a cold, humorless sound that sent a shiver down her spine. He denied everything at first, accusing her of being paranoid, of fabricating stories to ruin his life. But as Allison pointed to each piece of evidence, his denials grew weaker, until finally, he broke. He admitted to the affair, to the other family, to the double life he had been leading for years. His voice was flat, almost emotionless, as if he were recounting someone else's story. He claimed he never meant to hurt her, that he had been trapped in a situation he couldn't escape. He begged for forgiveness, his words dripping with desperation, but Allison wasn't fooled. She had seen the coldness in his eyes, the way he had laughed when she first confronted him. This wasn't a man who was truly sorry. This was a man who was sorry he had been caught. Allison's voice was steady as she told him she wanted a divorce and full custody of their children. She expected him to argue, to plead, to try to manipulate her into changing her mind. But instead, something shifted in Gabriel's demeanor. His tears dried up, and his face hardened into an expression she had never seen before. He took a step closer to her, his voice low and dangerous as he warned her not to ruin his life. He told her she would regret it if she tried to take everything from him, his words laced with a threat that made her blood run cold. Allison stood her ground, refusing to back down, but inside she was terrified. This wasn't the man she had married, the man she had trusted with her life and the lives of their children. This was someone else entirely, someone capable of deception, of cruelty, of things she couldn't even begin to imagine. She knew then that she was in danger, that Gabriel would do whatever it took to protect his secrets. After he left, Allison sat alone in the living room, her mind racing. She knew she needed to act quickly to protect herself and her children. She called her sister Cora and told her everything, her voice breaking as she recounted the confrontation. Cora urged her to leave the house, to come stay with her, but Allison refused. She couldn't uproot the kids, not yet. Instead, she began to document everything, gathering as much evidence as she could. She contacted a lawyer and started the process of filing for divorce, all while keeping a wary eye on Gabriel, who had become even more distant and unpredictable. The days that followed were tense and exhausting. Gabriel moved out of the house, but he called constantly, alternating between apologies and threats. Allison tried to stay strong, to focus on her children and the future, but the weight of it all was crushing. She knew the battle ahead would be long and difficult, but she was determined to fight for her family, no matter the cost. What she didn't know was that Gabriel had already begun to make his own plans that would soon turn her world upside down. A week after the confrontation, Allison vanished. It started as an ordinary day. She dropped Emma and Noah off at school, waved goodbye to their teacher, and drove home to tackle her usual chores. But by mid-afternoon, when she didn't show up to pick up the kids, the first threads of unease began to unravel. The school called Cora, Allison's sister, who had been listed as an emergency contact. Cora tried calling Allison's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She rushed to the house, her heart pounding with dread. When Cora arrived, the house was eerily quiet. The front door was unlocked, which was unusual for Allison, who was always meticulous about security. Inside, everything seemed normal. At first glance, the living room tidy, the kitchen clean. But as Cora moved through the house, she noticed small, unsettling details. A chair in the dining room was knocked over, a vase of flowers lay shattered on the floor, and in the master bedroom the bed was unmade, the sheets tangled as if there had been a struggle. A broken lamp lay on the floor, and a faint smear of blood stained the edge of the carpet. Cora's hands shook as she called the police. When they arrived, they conducted a thorough search of the house, documenting every detail. They found Allison's phone on the kitchen counter, her purse still hanging by the door. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The officers questioned Gabriel, who claimed he hadn't seen Allison since their argument a week earlier. He suggested she might have needed some time alone, perhaps to clear her head after their confrontation, but Cora knew better. Allison would never leave her children without warning, no matter how upset she was. The police began to dig deeper into Gabriel's alibi. He claimed he had been at work all day, but his co-workers said he had left early and hadn't returned. Surveillance footage from his office building showed him leaving around noon, but there was no record of where he went after that. Detectives also discovered that Gabriel had been making frequent trips to a remote area about an hour outside of town, a place he had no obvious reason to visit. When they questioned him about it, he became defensive, offering vague explanations that didn't add up. As the investigation progressed, the police uncovered more about Gabriel's double life. They tracked down Lisa, the woman from his messages, and interviewed her. Lisa admitted to knowing about Allison, but claimed she had no idea Gabriel was still married. She described him as a devoted partner and father to their 2 children, painting a picture of a man who seemed to genuinely care for her. But she also revealed that Gabriel had been acting strangely in the days leading up to Allison's disappearance. He had been agitated, distracted, and had made cryptic comments about fixing things and ending the mess. The police also discovered that Gabriel had recently taken out a life insurance policy on Allison, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. The timing was suspicious, coming just months before her disappearance. When confronted with this information, Gabriel grew visibly nervous, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. But without concrete evidence linking him to Allison's disappearance, the police were limited in what they could do. Cora refused to give up. She organized search parties, plastered the town with missing person flyers, and kept Allison's story in the public eye. She knew her sister wouldn't have just walked away, and she was determined to find out what had happened to her. The community rallied around her, offering support and sharing information, but as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Then a breakthrough came. A hiker in a remote wooded area stumbled upon something that would change everything. A shallow grave, partially hidden by fallen leaves and debris. The police were called, and the remains were quickly identified as Allison's. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community and brought the investigation to a grim new phase. The evidence pointed squarely at Gabriel, but proving his guilt would require piecing together the final, horrifying moments of Allison's life. The truth was closer than ever, but it came at a devastating cost. The discovery of Allison's body marked a turning point in the case. The remote wooded area where she was found became a hive of activity as forensic teams combed through the scene, collecting every piece of evidence they could. The initial examination revealed that Allison had been strangled, and the positioning of her body suggested she had been hastily buried, as if her killer was in a rush to hide what he had done. The police quickly zeroed in on Gabriel, whose behavior and alibi had already raised red flags. But it was the life insurance policy that sealed his fate. Detectives dug deeper into Gabriel's finances and uncovered the shocking truth. Just months before Allison's disappearance, he had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on her, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. The timing was damning, and it painted a chilling picture of premeditation. When confronted with this evidence, Gabriel's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. He tried to explain it away, claiming it was a routine decision to protect their family's future, but no one was buying it. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and they all pointed to one conclusion. Gabriel had killed his wife to cash in on the policy and continue his double life without interference. The trial was a media sensation, drawing national attention as the details of Gabriel's secret life and Allison's tragic death were laid bare. The prosecution presented a compelling case, painting Gabriel as a manipulative and calculating man who would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. They presented the messages between Gabriel and Lisa, the photos of his other family, and the financial records showing the withdrawals and the life insurance policy. They also highlighted the evidence from the crime scene, including the signs of a struggle in the Owens home and the forensic evidence linking Gabriel to the shallow grave where Allison's body was found. Gabriel's defense team fought back, arguing that there was no direct evidence tying him to the murder. They claimed that Allison's death could have been the result of a random act of violence, and they tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's timeline and motives, but the jury wasn't convinced. The sheer volume of circumstantial evidence, combined with Gabriel's suspicious behavior and lack of a credible alibi, was enough to sway them. After hours of deliberation, they returned with a verdict: guilty. The courtroom erupted in a mix of gasps, tears, and quiet murmurs as the judge sentenced Gabriel to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Allison's family, who had sat through every agonizing day of the trial, finally felt a sense of closure. Cora, who had been relentless in her pursuit of justice for her sister, broke down in tears, her emotions a mix of relief and grief. She knew that no verdict could bring Allison back, but at least Gabriel would never be able to hurt anyone else. In the aftermath of the trial, the full extent of Gabriel's deception came to light. Investigators discovered that he had been living his double life for nearly a decade, carefully balancing his time and resources between Allison and Lisa. He had even gone so far as to create fake documents and aliases to maintain the illusion. The revelation left everyone who knew him reeling, struggling to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster he had become. For Allison's children, the loss of their mother was compounded by the betrayal of their father. They were left in the care of Cora, who vowed to honor Allison's memory by giving them the love and stability they deserved. The community, too, rallied around the family, offering support and ensuring that Allison's legacy would not be forgotten. The case became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how easily appearances can deceive and how dangerous it can be to trust blindly. Allison's courage in uncovering the truth had cost her life, but her story served as a powerful warning to others. It was a tragic end to a life cut short, but through the efforts of those who loved her, justice was finally served. And though the scars of her loss would never fully heal, her memory lived on as a testament to the strength of those who fight for the truth, no matter the cost.